The land did not forgive mistakes. It only waited. Adam learned that early, first as a soldier, later as a man who tried to carve a life out of dust and silence. His ranch sat where maps grew vague, a stretch of dry earth pressed between the rules of white towns and the hunting grounds of the Apache. No fence line truly held here. Only understanding did, and even that was fragile. The soil was stubborn, cracked like old knuckles. It took more strength to pull a living from it than it ever gave back. Adam worked it anyway. Every morning before the sun cleared the ridgeline, he was already outside, hands wrapped around tools worn smooth by years of use. He didn't talk to the land. He didn't curse it either. He simply worked because stopping meant thinking, and thinking was dangerous. Once this place had held voices, laughter carried on the wind. A woman's hum from the doorway, small boots running across the porch, asking questions that didn't need answers. That was before the winter came hard and early, before the sickness spread faster than warmth, before the nights grew so cold that firewood disappeared like breath. Adam survived. His wife did not, neither did their child. The ground took them, same as it took everything else. After that, the ranch became less a home and more a routine. Wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. He did not leave flowers at the graves anymore. He did not pray. He had learned that hope was a luxury and grief was a habit that never truly broke. It only learned to sit quietly. The nearest town lay half a day's ride away. Adam went there only when supplies ran thin. The townsfolk watched him with a mix of caution and unease. A man alone, living that close to Apache land, was either brave or foolish, sometimes both. He returned their looks with silence. Community had rules, expectations, obligations. Adam wanted none of it. He trusted labor. He trusted the weight of a shovel, the pull of reins, the ache in his back at night that proved the day had passed honestly. The land might starve him, but it would not lie. The Apache presence was always felt, even when unseen. Tracks near the creek, smoke far off in the hills, a sense of being watched, not with malice, but with memory. Adam respected that. He stayed clear of their hunting paths, never fired unless he had to, never pretended the land was his alone. The white man's law said the land was his by paper and ink. The Apache knew land didn't belong to anyone. Adam stood between those truths, belonging fully to neither. At night, the wind carried sounds that could have been coyotes, or something else. He slept light, rifle within reach, not because he expected trouble, but because vigilance was another habit survival taught well. Still, there was no fear in him. Fear required something to lose. He had already lost it. Sometimes as the fire burned low, memories crept in uninvited. His wife's hands, red from cold, pressing a cup into his. His child's laugh, thin but bright, cutting through the quiet. Those moments never stayed long. Adam did not chase them. He let them pass, like weather. Living had become muscle memory. The ranch creaked under winter winds and summer heat alike. Fences leaned but held. The roof leaked in one corner. Nothing here was perfect, but it endured. So did Adam. He no longer believed in rebuilding, only in maintaining, keeping things from falling apart one more day. That was enough. If anyone had asked him why he stayed, he wouldn't have had an answer worth giving. He stayed because the land was there, because leaving required direction, and staying required only effort, because the dead did not follow him here. Adam was alive, but he did not belong to the world anymore. Not to the towns that whispered his name, not to the laws drawn on paper, not to the people who still believed in futures. He belonged to the work, to the land that demanded nothing but endurance, to the long, quiet days that asked no questions. And at the edge of that world, where snow, silence, and old boundaries met, something unseen was already moving toward him, though he did not know it yet. The land, as always, was waiting. Luna had never been afraid of silence. She grew up listening to it, stretching across mesas at dawn, settling into the firelight after council meetings, lingering in the pauses between elders' words. Silence in her world was not emptiness. It was space to think, to choose. She had learned early how to read people without interrupting them, how to listen beyond what was spoken. That was why the elders once said she was sharp-minded, why some called her wise beyond her years. She noticed patterns others ignored. She asked questions that made men uncomfortable. Luna was born into a line that carried weight. Her family's name was spoken with respect around the fires. Decisions passed through their voices before becoming law. From childhood, she understood what that meant. Responsibility before desire, duty before self. But she also understood something else. Not every tradition deserved obedience. The winter before everything broke, the council gathered to decide two things: war and marriage. To Luna, they were the same discussion wearing different faces. A union arranged to secure alliances. Raids planned in retaliation for broken boundaries and broken pride. Blood promised to answer blood. She stood when others remained seated. Her voice did not shake. She said the war would take more than it returned, that the white settlements were growing, spreading like roots beneath the soil. That fighting every encroachment would not protect the people, it would exhaust them. She said survival was not weakness, that choosing when not to fight was also strength. Then she refused the marriage. The man chosen for her was a respected warrior, fierce and unquestioning. He would have led without hesitation. He would have given the elders exactly what they wanted: obedience wrapped in muscle. Luna did not hate him, but she would not bind herself to a future built on silence and blood. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Eyes narrowed. Someone said her words sounded like fear. Someone else said she'd spent too much time listening instead of living. A respected elder, old enough to remember treaties broken and winters starved through, spoke the words that sealed her fate. She thinks like the white man. It was the sharpest accusation they had. From that moment on, every thought she voiced was suspect. Her intelligence, once admired, was now examined for softness. Her restraint became hesitation. Her mercy became weakness. The same people who taught her to think now feared what her thinking might lead to. When the snow came early, thick and unrelenting, the council made its decision. Luna was told she would leave the camp until spring. Not as punishment, they said, as distance. Time to consider her place. Time to decide whether she belonged. She was allowed to take what she could carry. No escort, no promise of return. Honor was not stripped from her. That would have been easier. Instead, it was left intact, heavy and unforgiving. She carried it like a blade with no sheath. As she stepped beyond the last line of lodges, the camp behind her faded into whitened smoke. No one followed. No one called her name. The wind swallowed the sound of everything she had known. The land did not welcome her. Snow bit at her boots. Cold crept into her fingers, her breath turning thin and sharp in her chest. She moved because stopping meant freezing, and freezing meant dying. Each step forward felt less like choice and more like necessity. Luna did not cry. She had been taught that tears were for the living, and she was not done living yet. She followed valleys where the wind cut less fiercely, avoided open ridges where storms gathered like animals. At night, she found what shelter she could: rock overhangs, twisted trees, shallow dips in the land. She slept light, waking often, listening for danger that might never come. Hunger arrived quietly. Weakness followed slower, like a shadow that lengthened with every mile. Still, she did not turn back. Going back meant bending, meant agreeing that her thoughts were a flaw, that her refusal to trade herself for war was cowardice. Luna would rather disappear into the snow than accept that lie. She carried no illusions about survival. The winter was not a test sent by spirits. It was simply winter, cold, indifferent, patient. It did not care about lineage or honor. Neither did the land. By the time she reached the edge of the hunting grounds, where Apache paths blurred into spaces claimed by no one, her steps had grown uneven, her vision narrowed. The world reduced itself to white and gray, and the sound of her own breath. She still walked with her head high. She had lost her place among her people, but not herself. Not yet. Somewhere beyond the drifting snow, land waited that did not know her name. Somewhere beyond the cold, a boundary existed she had never meant to cross. Luna did not know it then, but the path she walked, driven by conviction and exile, was already bending toward another life, toward a man who also lived between worlds, toward a place where survival would demand more than endurance. The winter pressed in. The fence should have been untouched. Adam noticed it the moment he stepped outside that morning. Snow lay thick across the land, smooth and unbroken, the kind of quiet that made sound feel like a violation. His breath rose in pale clouds as he scanned the line of posts running along the eastern edge of the ranch. Then he saw them. Footprints. They were shallow, uneven, drifting too close to the wire. Not animal, not careless enough to be a child's. Someone had crossed here in the night, or tried to. Adam felt the old instinct tighten in his chest, the one he'd learned long before the ranch, long before the land. His hand moved toward the rifle without thought. Out here, tracks meant trouble. He followed them slowly, keeping to the wind, boots crunching softly in the snow. The prints staggered, veering off, doubling back, then thinning. Whoever it was had been moving without strength, fighting the cold more than direction. Adam's jaw set. A thief, maybe. A scout. Or worse, someone desperate enough to take risks this close to Apache ground. The trail dipped toward a stand of scrub where the land fell away slightly. Adam crested the rise and stopped. She lay there half buried in snow. At first he thought she was already dead. Her body was still, one arm twisted beneath her, dark hair frozen against her cheek. The wind tugged weakly at the fringe of her clothing. Apache make, worn thin, stitched with care. Her skin was pale beneath the cold, lips cracked, breath so shallow it was almost invisible. An Apache woman, not a threat, not a thief, just someone at the edge of her strength. Adam stood frozen, the rifle heavy in his hands. His mind moved faster than his body, measuring consequences the way it always did now. If he touched her, the Apache might see it as interference, a provocation. If word reached town, the white men would say he was harboring one of them, ask questions he had no interest in answering. And if he walked away, the answer to that came quickly. The cold was already doing its work. She would not last another hour. Adam swallowed hard. He had stood like this before. Different place, different winter. The memory rose unbidden, snow piling against the door, his wife's breathing shallow, the child burning with fever. He had gone out then too, into the storm, looking for help that never came fast enough. That was the night he learned what it felt like to arrive too late. He lowered the rifle. The snow creaked under his knees as he knelt beside her. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought, though her face carried a hardness earned, not given. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse, faint but there. Still here. Damn it, he muttered. Not at her, not at the land, but at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Adam shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, the fabric stiff with frost. Her eyes fluttered open for a brief second, dark and unfocused, before closing again. Her lips moved, soundless. He lifted her carefully. She weighed less than he expected, all bone and stubborn will. Each step back toward the ranch felt heavier than the last, the wind biting at his face as if trying to drive him back. Halfway there, he paused. He could still turn around, lay her somewhere sheltered, tell himself he'd done enough, tell himself it wasn't his place. The thought sickened him. Adam adjusted his grip and kept walking. The cabin door groaned open, letting the cold rush inside before he kicked it shut behind him. He laid her near the hearth, built the fire higher than usual, fed it until warmth crept back into the room. Snow melted from her hair onto the floor, darkening the wood. He knelt again, this time with water warmed just enough not to shock. He pressed it to her lips. At first, nothing. Then a faint response, a swallow. Relief came sharp and unwelcome. As the minutes passed, color returned slowly to her cheeks. Her breathing steadied, though she did not wake. Adam sat back on his heels, watching the firelight flicker across her face, trying not to think about what this meant. The ranch was no longer just his. He had crossed a line, not marked by fences or maps, but by choice, the kind that could not be undone. Outside, the wind howled across the open land, erasing tracks as if they'd never existed. The snow kept falling, indifferent to boundaries, to men, to wars waiting to be fought. Adam stared at the woman by the fire, his hands still trembling from the cold. He hadn't saved her because he was kind. He'd saved her because he couldn't bear to walk away again. And in doing so, he had set something in motion neither of them could yet see. The land, as always, was watching. She woke to the sound of fire, Not the roar of flames, but the low, steady crackle that meant warmth had been earned, not wasted. The smell of wood smoke filled her lungs as her eyes opened slowly, light blurring into shape above her. A rough, beamed ceiling, shadows moving along the walls, a place that was not the snow. Her body ached in quiet, distant ways. The cold had retreated, but it had left its mark. When she tried to move, pain answered first. Luna turned her head. The man stood near the table, his back half to her, sharpening a knife with slow, deliberate strokes. He did not startle when she stirred. He had been listening. He always listened. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. She studied him through the haze of waking. Tall, broad-shouldered, worn down rather than hardened. His movements were careful, economical, like someone who measured effort because effort cost something. There was no hostility in his posture, but no welcome either. Adam finally looked up. Their eyes met, and the air between them tightened. She was Apache. He was white. They both knew what that meant. Instinct told her to rise, to put space between them, but weakness pinned her where she lay. Her hand twitched toward the small blade strapped to her calf. Adam noticed, then slowly stepped back, setting the knife down where she could see it clearly. Not a threat, not an offer, just a boundary. They spoke different languages, but the message landed all the same. Adam brought her water again, holding the cup just close enough for her to drink if she chose. She hesitated, eyes never leaving his face, then accepted it with shaking fingers. Their hands did not touch. Trust did not bloom. It edged forward, wary. When she finished, he gestured around the cabin, small, solid, built to endure rather than impress. He pointed to the fire, then to the door, then pressed a hand flat against his chest. His name. She understood enough of that. She answered in Apache, her voice low, steady despite the strain. Her name carried weight, even here, even now. He did not repeat it. He only nodded, storing it away. The hours passed in fragments. He moved about the cabin, tending to chores that could not wait. She slept in between, waking to find food set nearby, blankets adjusted, the fire kept alive. He never hovered, never turned his back completely either. By nightfall, they both understood the truth. Neither wanted to say aloud. She could not leave. Outside, the storm had erased the world. Snow piled against the windows, swallowing distance and direction. Even if she were strong enough to walk, there was nowhere to go. And Adam knew it too. He sat across from her at the table, the fire between them like a third presence. He spoke slowly, choosing words that mattered. She caught pieces. Winter, long, dangerous. He pointed to the door again, then shook his head. Not safe. She listened, then answered with gestures of her own. She would not bring others here. She would not cross his land. She would work. She mimed hands in soil, carrying water, mending. A pause. Then Adam spoke again, firmer this time. He pointed beyond the walls, tracing an invisible line in the air. Stay. He pressed his palm down flat. Final. Do not leave the land. And then, more carefully, he tapped his lips and shook his head. No one can know. The agreement formed not as a handshake, but as an understanding shaped by necessity. She would stay through the winter. She would help where she could. She would remain unseen. In return, he would give her shelter, heat, time. It was not kindness. It was not mercy. It was survival. Luna considered him for a long moment. Pride urged her to refuse. Honor whispered that dependence was a form of surrender. But the cold outside had already stripped away illusions. She nodded once. That night, she slept closer to the fire. Adam took the chair by the door, rifle across his knees, eyes open even when his body slumped with fatigue. They existed in the same space without sharing it, bound together by silence thicker than words. Days followed a rhythm. She learned the layout of the cabin, the creak of certain boards, the way the wind pressed harder from the north. When her strength returned, she rose without being asked, swept the floor, mended torn fabric, carried water with steady determination. They spoke little. When they did, it was with glances, gestures, fragments of language that slowly found common ground. He showed her where tools were kept. She showed him how to set snares that did not waste meat. two lives overlapping without merging. At night, when the fire burned low and the wind reminded them how thin the walls were, Adam would stare into the flames, jaw tight. Saving her had changed nothing, and everything. The land was still unforgiving. The world beyond still hostile. But this time, when he'd been given the chance to walk away, he hadn't. Not because he was good, but because he could not bear to turn his back one more time. And in the quiet between them, a pact had been sealed, not by law or promise, but by the simple refusal to let another life be lost to the cold. The days settled into a pattern neither of them named. Morning came with frost clinging to the edges of the world. Adam rose first as he always had, feeding the fire, checking the sky through the narrow window. Luna followed once the light strengthened, her movements quiet, deliberate. They worked without speaking, not because words were forbidden, but because silence had proven reliable. By day they shared the land. Adam broke the frozen ground where it allowed, testing the soil with a stubborn patience learned over years. Luna worked beside him, her hands steady, her breath measured. She did not complain when the cold bit through her gloves or when the earth resisted the blade. She learned quickly, where the ground softened first, how to read the wind before it shifted. When the fence sagged under snow and age, they fixed it together. Adam held the post while Luna wrapped wire tight, fingers nimble despite the chill. Their coordination grew instinctive. He did not need to tell her when to pull. She did not need to ask when to brace. The work spoke for them. They were careful with distance, close enough to pass tools, far enough to keep boundaries intact. At night, the cabin divided itself into two quiet territories. Luna slept near the hearth, wrapped in blankets, the firelight tracing the sharp lines of her face. Adam took the back room, the one that still smelled faintly of old winters and older memories. The door between them stayed closed. Silence stretched long after the fire settled. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was cautious, watchful, the kind that waited to see if it would be broken. Small things began to change without announcement. One evening, Adam came in with his coat torn at the elbow, fabric snagged on wire. He hung it by the door without comment. Later, when he reached for it again, the tear was gone. Luna sat by the fire, needle in hand, eyes lowered. She did not look up when he noticed. Adam paused, then nodded once. No thanks spoken, none required. Another day, he brought the hunting rifle out into the open, set it carefully on the table. Luna watched from across the room, expression unreadable. Adam showed her how to hold it, where to place her hands, how to steady her breathing, how to respect the weight of it. He did not rush her. He did not crowd her space. She listened, learned, fired once into the snow-covered hill beyond the fence, the recoil surprising her. Adam allowed himself the smallest smile when she steadied herself and tried again. Better this time. They ate together, though never across from one another. Meals were simple. Beans, bread, meat when the traps were kind. They chewed in silence, eyes occasionally lifting, meeting briefly, then drifting away. The absence of words felt intentional now, like something they were protecting. Luna began to notice things Adam never mentioned. How he favored one shoulder, how he lingered before stepping into certain rooms, how his hands stilled when the wind sounded too much like the storms that had taken his family. She did not ask. She understood enough to let those moments pass. Adam noticed things too, how Luna paused before sitting with her back to the door, how she counted her steps unconsciously when crossing open ground, how her gaze followed the horizon at dusk as if expecting something or someone to appear. Neither named what they saw. Trust grew the way roots do, slow, unseen, breaking stone without announcing itself. The winter pressed on, but the cabin held. Snow piled against the walls, sealing them into a world narrowed to firelight and routine. Some nights Adam lay awake, listening to the crackle of the hearth, aware of her presence only a few paces away. Not a threat, not a burden. Something else. Luna lay awake too, staring at the beams overhead, feeling the steady rhythm of the place. The land was harsh, but it was honest. The man who worked it was the same. She had not belonged to the ranch, and the ranch did not belong to her. Yet here she was, still breathing, still standing. They had not planned this closeness. It had arrived quietly, stitched together by shared labor and unspoken respect. No promises had been made, no lines crossed. But something was growing. Not love, not yet. That word carried expectations neither of them could afford. What grew instead was steadier, a recognition, a shared endurance. The sense that survival, when carried together, felt different than survival alone. One evening, as the light faded and the wind calmed, Adam handed Luna a cup of water before she asked for it. She took it, their fingers brushing for the briefest moment. Neither pulled away too quickly. The fire cracked softly. Outside, the snow kept falling, indifferent as ever. Inside, two lives continued side by side, separate, cautious, and slowly, unmistakably changing. Whatever was forming between them had no name yet, but it was there. The land noticed first, before Adam did, before Luna felt it in her bones. Something had shifted along the outer edges of the ranch, subtle as a change in wind. Tracks appeared where there should have been none, pressed deep, deliberate, then gone again, not careless, not hurried, watched. Adam found them at dawn near the creek. He crouched low, fingers brushing the snow without disturbing it. These were not the wandering marks of hunters passing through. They circled, measured, returned. Whoever made them wanted to be seen just enough to be known. Apache warriors. He straightened slowly, scanning the ridgeline. Nothing moved. No silhouettes against the sky. No sound but the creek groaning under ice. That didn't mean they weren't there. It meant they were good. When he returned to the cabin, Luna knew before he spoke. She saw it in the way his shoulders held tension now, the way his eyes lingered too long on the open ground beyond the window. She followed him outside later, careful to stay within the line they had never formally drawn but both respected. "They know," she said quietly. Adam did not ask how. He only nodded once. For the Apache, Luna was unfinished business. She had not returned. She had not died. She existed somewhere in between, and that unsettled the order of things. Her absence was a question the elders had not answered yet. Her survival was a possibility that carried weight. And Adam was the problem no one could name cleanly. A white man living where borders blurred. A man who had not pushed deeper into their land, nor retreated back to town. A man who had taken in what the winter should have claimed. To the Apache, that did not make him a hero. It made him uncertain. Days passed and the watchers stayed hidden. Adam felt them when he worked the far fence, when the wind went still too suddenly, when the birds stopped calling all at once. He never raised his rifle, never pretended he did not know. That was the test, he understood. Not reaction, but restraint. Luna moved differently now, more aware of where she stepped, more careful with the fire at night, keeping the smoke low. She did not speak Apache prayers aloud. She did not signal. She waited. The warriors did not approach the cabin. They did not announce themselves. They watched how Adam worked, how he treated the land, how he treated her, from the trees, from the hills, from places meant to stay unseen. One morning, Adam found a snare he had not set, empty, but reset with care. Another day, a piece of wire he'd left loose was tightened by hands not his own. No message, no threat, acknowledgement. The ranch had become more than a place to survive the winter. It was now a measure. Would the man claim ownership beyond labor? Would he hide her or cage her? Would he treat her as a secret or as a choice? Luna felt the weight of their eyes most at night. She sat by the fire mending cloth, her hands steady though her chest tightened with memory. These were her people, the same ones who taught her to read the land, to listen before acting. Now they listened to her silence. She wondered what they saw. A woman sheltered? A woman captured? Or a woman who had chosen something they did not yet understand? Adam did not ask her to leave. He did not urge her to stay. He continued as he always had, working, repairing, enduring. But something in him had sharpened. He slept lighter, walked the boundary more often, not to challenge but to show presence. He was not hiding. That mattered. One afternoon, Luna stepped beyond the immediate yard for the first time since the storm that nearly took her life. She moved slowly, deliberately, stopping well before the tree line. She stood there, head high, hands visible, letting herself be seen. Adam watched from a distance, heart tight, saying nothing. She did not call out. She did not bow. She simply stood. A long time passed. Then somewhere beyond sight, a branch snapped. Once. Clean. Intentional. The watchers had seen her. That night, the wind carried unfamiliar scents. Wood smoke that was not theirs. Horses far off. Their presence felt more than heard. Adam sat by the door, rifle resting across his knees, not aimed anywhere. Luna sat across from him, firelight flickering across her face. "They're deciding," she said. "About you?" Adam asked. She shook her head. "About us." The truth settled heavy between them. The Apache had not come to reclaim her. Not yet. They had not come to threaten him. Not yet. They were measuring something older than law and newer than blood. Honor. And the ranch, this narrow strip of land caught between worlds, had become the ground on which that honor would be tested. No shots were fired, no words were spoken, but the watching had begun. And once begun, it would not end quietly. The storm arrived without warning. By dusk, the sky had already closed in on itself, clouds pressing low and heavy, swallowing the last strip of daylight. Snow began to fall sideways, driven hard by wind that howled like something alive. Adam secured the shutters, reinforcing the door with practiced hands. He had seen storms like this before. He knew what they could do. Inside, the cabin held, barely. Luna had been quiet all afternoon, quieter than usual. At first, Adam thought it was the tension of the watchers still lingering beyond the land. But when she staggered while crossing the room, he saw the truth written plainly in her face. Her skin burned beneath his palm. Fever. She tried to wave it off, stubborn even now, but her legs betrayed her. Adam caught her before she fell, the weight of her sudden and fragile in his arms. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her breath came shallow, uneven. He guided her to the bed near the hearth, piling blankets high, stoking the fire until heat pushed back the cold gnawing at the walls. Outside, the storm roared, sealing them in completely. No riding out, no help coming. Only this night. Luna drifted in and out of awareness, words slipping from her in fragments, half memories, half dreams. Adam knelt beside her, replacing cold cloths on her forehead, murmuring reassurances she might not hear. He measured time by the fire, by the rise and fall of her chest. Once he reached for water and froze. The past crashed into him without mercy. Another winter, another body burning with fever, another night spent waiting for dawn that arrived too late. His hands trembled. "No," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Not again." He stayed. Hour after hour, he stayed. When her fever spiked, he held her steady. When chills racked her frame, he wrapped her closer, lending warmth without thinking of the line he crossed. There was no space for distance anymore, only urgency. At some point in the night, her eyes opened fully. She looked at him, not confused, not afraid, present. "You stayed," she said softly, her voice rough. "Yes," he answered, just as quietly. There was no title in that word, no role, not host, not guest, not protector, not protected, just yes. The storm battered the cabin, but inside time slowed. The world narrowed to firelight and breath and the shared awareness that something fragile lay between them. Luna reached out weakly, her fingers catching the sleeve of his shirt, anchoring herself. "Don't leave," she said. Not as an order, not as fear, but as truth. Adam swallowed. He shook his head once. "I'm here." In that moment, the boundaries they had honored for weeks dissolved. Not dramatically, not with defiance. They simply ceased to matter. She was not Apache. He was not white. There was no land to claim, no rules to enforce, only two people who understood loss too well and recognized it in each other. As the fever finally began to break, Luna relaxed against him, exhaustion pulling her down. Adam brushed damp hair from her face, his touch gentle, reverent. He leaned closer without realizing he had decided to. Their foreheads touched. The kiss came slowly, not driven by hunger, not by longing sharpened into desire. It was quiet, careful, a meeting rather than a taking. lips pressed together as if to say, "I see you. I know what this costs." Luna exhaled, the tension leaving her in a single breath. Adam felt it too, the release of something he'd held locked away since the night the land took everything from him. When they pulled back, neither spoke. They did not need to. The storm raged on, but it no longer felt like a threat. The fire burned steady. Luna slept again, her breathing deep and even now. Adam remained beside her, one hand resting lightly against hers, grounding both of them. He did not sleep. He watched the night pass, listening to the wind ease, feeling the fragile truth settle into place. This had not been about desire. It had not been about escape. It was recognition. By morning, the snow would lie deep and quiet, covering tracks, erasing evidence of what had brought them together. But what had happened inside the cabin could not be buried so easily. When dawn finally crept in, pale and uncertain, Adam understood something he hadn't allowed himself to consider before. Saving her had been the first line crossed. This was the second, and there would be no going back to the way things had been. The storm left scars behind. Snow lay thick across the land, smoothing everything into deceptive calm. Fences stood buried at their bases. Paths disappeared. To an untrained eye, the ranch looked untouched, isolated, forgotten. It was none of those things. The first sign came with riders. Adam spotted them late in the afternoon. 4 men on horseback cresting the southern ridge, moving without urgency, as if they already believed the land beneath them was theirs. He felt the shift immediately, the old warning tightening in his chest. These weren't travelers lost to weather. They rode with purpose, claim seekers, men who measured land by fences they planned to build and papers they hadn't yet forged. Adam stepped outside, making no move to hide. The riders slowed when they saw him, eyes scanning the property with open calculation. One of them dismounted, boots crunching loudly in the snow, a smile fixed too easily on his face. "Didn't know anyone still lived out here," the man said, glancing past Adam toward the cabin. Adam didn't answer. That was when the man's gaze shifted, caught on movement near the window. Just a flicker. Enough. An Apache woman. The smile vanished. "Well now," the man said slowly. "That explains things." Aware, the accusation came quickly, sharpened by opportunity. Harboring the enemy, aiding savages, betraying his own kind. The men spoke over one another, voices rising, already imagining how useful this discovery might be. Land disputes favored men who could paint others as criminals. Adam felt the trap close. He could deny it, claim she'd wandered off, pretend ignorance. But lies had weight, and this one would crush her. "She's under my roof," he said finally. "That's all you need to know." The men exchanged looks. One laughed softly. "Oh, we know exactly what that means," he replied. "And so will the town." They rode off before dusk, not needing to threaten. The damage was already done. The white world had noticed. That same night, Luna felt it too, but from the opposite direction. She stepped outside just after dark, standing at the edge of the cleared ground, breath fogging the air. The watchers had been quiet since the storm. Too quiet. Then the trees shifted, not from wind, but from presence. An elder stepped forward alone. He moved slowly, deliberately, wrapped in layers marked by age and authority. His face was lined deep with memory, eyes sharp and assessing. Luna knew him. Everyone did. He was a voice that carried weight, a man who had shaped decisions long before she ever spoke against them. "You survived," he said in Apache, his tone neither warm nor cold. "I did," she answered. "You were not meant to," he replied. The words landed without cruelty, just truth. He told her the council had spoken her name again, that her absence had become inconvenient, her survival uncomfortable. The people needed direction, and symbols mattered. A woman cast out and reclaimed would send the right message. Unity, strength, control. "You will come back," he said. "You will stand with us. You will remind them what obedience looks like." Luna's hands curled at her sides. "And if I refuse?" The elder's gaze flicked briefly toward the cabin, toward Adam. "Then you will be taken," he said simply, "and the man will be dealt with." Not a threat, a statement. When Adam stepped into the firelight behind her, The elder regarded him calmly, without hostility or respect. Just assessment. He saw what the Apache warriors had been watching for weeks. Not possession, choice. The elder nodded once, then stepped back into the darkness, leaving the decision hanging where it could not be ignored. Inside the cabin, the silence returned, but it had changed. Adam told her about the riders, about the accusation already moving toward town. Luna told him about the elder, about the plan to use her as a symbol, a voice stripped of choice, two pressures, two worlds, closing in from opposite sides. Neither offered mercy. "They want to tear us apart," Luna said quietly. Adam stared into the fire, jaw set. "They don't care what it costs." Outside, the night pressed closer, heavy with unspoken threats. The ranch that had once been a place of quiet survival now stood at the center of something larger, something dangerous. The white men saw land and leverage. The Apache saw honor and control. And between them stood two people who had never asked to be symbols, but who had become them anyway. The winter had bound Adam and Luna together. Now the world beyond the snow wanted to decide what that bond was worth, and neither side intended to let them choose easily. They came at midday, not under cover of darkness, not with ambush or warning shots. They came openly, as if the land itself had summoned them. From the south rode the white men, 5 this time, horses slow, confident. From the tree line to the east, Apache figures emerged, silent, measured, their presence felt before it was fully seen. The ranch stood between them like a held breath. Adam stepped out first. He did not reach for his rifle. He did not move toward the fence. He stopped in the open ground, boots planted firmly in the snow, hands visible at his sides. The wind cut sharp across his face, but he welcomed it. It kept him awake, present. This was no longer a moment to survive quietly. One of the white men spoke, his voice carrying easily in the cold air. He recited accusations as if reading from a ledger, harboring an enemy, violating territorial law, threatening local order. Each word was chosen to justify what they wanted to take. Adam listened without interrupting. When the man finished, Adam spoke. "This is my land," he said, his voice steady, unraised. "I've worked it. I've buried on it. I've bled on it. Whatever you think you see here, it's not yours to claim." A murmur rippled through the group. "And the Apache woman?" another man demanded. Adam didn't look back at the cabin. He didn't need to. "She's here because I chose that," he said. "I didn't buy her. I didn't take her. I didn't hide her. I made a decision, same as I make every day out here." The Apache warriors shifted slightly, attention sharpening. The elder stepped forward, his presence drawing the moment inward. He spoke in Apache first, his words measured, heavy with expectation. He reminded Luna of her lineage, of the responsibility she carried, of what her return would mean to the people, to unity, to order. He did not ask. Luna walked out beside Adam. She did not stand behind him. She stood beside him, equal in the open space, snow crunching beneath her boots. The wind pulled at her hair, but she did not pull it back. She lifted her chin, eyes meeting those she had once called home. "I am not being kept here," she said, her voice clear. "I was not taken. I was not silenced." The elder watched her closely. "I am here because I chose to stay," she continued. "I was cast out for refusing a future built on blood and obedience. I will not return to be used as proof that silence is strength." The white men scoffed softly. One spat into the snow. "Sounds like a story told to soften betrayal," he said. Luna turned her gaze on him, not angry, not afraid, certain. "You don't get to name my choices," she said. "You don't get to profit from them either." Silence followed. This was the moment both sides had waited for, the one where someone would flinch, where fear would force retreat, where violence could be justified. Adam felt the weight of it settle into his chest. He thought of the winters he'd endured alone, of the nights he'd believed survival was all he had left. He realized, standing there now, that survival without choice had never truly been living. He stepped forward half a pace. "I won't hand her over," he said. "Not to you, not to anyone. And I won't pretend she isn't here. If you want this land, you'll have to take it knowing exactly what you're doing." The white men exchanged glances. They saw the Apache warriors watching, calculating. Violence here would not be clean. It would not be easy. The elder studied Adam for a long moment, then looked back to Luna. "You stand where you should not," he said. "I stand where I am," she replied. Something passed between them then. Not agreement, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. The elder nodded once, slow and deliberate. "So be it," he said. "The land has heard you." He turned and stepped back into the trees. One by one, the Apache followed, melting into the forest without another word. The white men lingered a moment longer, anger and frustration warring with caution. Finally, one tipped his hat in mock respect. "This isn't over," he said. Adam met his gaze. "It never is." Iktuna, the riders turned away. When the last sound of hooves faded, the ranch felt different. Not safer, not settled, but claimed in a way paper never could be. Luna exhaled slowly. "They'll remember this," she said. Adam nodded. "So will we." They stood together in the quiet that followed, the snow falling gently again, erasing tracks, softening edges. The choice had been made, in the open, without hiding, without apology. Whatever came next would come because they had chosen it. And that, for the first time, felt like freedom. The land grew quiet again. Not the fragile quiet of waiting, but the deeper kind. The kind that settles after a choice has been made and accepted. The Apache did not return. Their watchers vanished as silently as they had come, leaving no signs behind but memory. The white men stayed away too, their ambition dulled by the knowledge that this place would not yield easily. The ranch remained what it had always been, unforgiving, stubborn, indifferent to hope. Spring did not arrive gently. Snow retreated in patches, revealing ground that looked no kinder than before. The soil cracked as it thawed, demanding effort for every inch worked. Fences still leaned. The roof still leaked when the rain came hard. Nothing had changed, and everything had. The cabin no longer felt hollow, not fuller in the way towns measure life, but steadier. Luna's presence did not soften the land, but it gave the space weight. Purpose. She moved through the rooms as if she had always known their shape, placing things where they made sense, not where tradition said they should go. There were no discussions of vows, no promises spoken aloud. Neither of them trusted words that tried to bind the future. What they had chosen did not need ceremony. They stayed. That was enough. Mornings found them working side by side again, the way they had through winter, but now without the careful distance. Adam broke the soil while Luna followed, setting seed where the earth allowed. Sometimes their hands brushed. Sometimes they shared a look that needed no explanation. They spoke more now, but not often. Conversation grew in practical places: weather, work, the state of the fence. When the past surfaced, it did so quietly. Adam spoke once of his wife and child, his voice low, unadorned. Luna listened without interrupting, her hand resting near his, not forcing comfort, simply offering presence. She spoke of her people too, not in anger, not in longing, but in truth, of what she had loved, of what she could not accept. Adam did not try to fix it. He understood now that some wounds were not meant to close, only to be carried with care. At night, they sat on the porch when the weather allowed, watching the land darken under the wide sky. Coyotes called in the distance. Stars burned cold and clear. The world remained vast and unmoved by their small decisions. But the silence no longer felt empty. The ranch did not promise safety. The future remained uncertain. Papers could be challenged, tempers could flare, seasons could turn cruel without warning. Adam knew that. Luna did too. They did not pretend otherwise. Still, they worked the land together. They mended what broke. They rested when they could. They faced each day without rehearsing fear. No one claimed ownership over the other. No roles were assigned. They were not symbols anymore. Not to tribes or towns or histories that demanded allegiance. They were simply two people who had chosen not to walk away. One afternoon, as they stood at the edge of the field, Adam paused, leaning on his shovel. Luna stood beside him, wiping dirt from her hands, eyes scanning the horizon. "This place doesn't offer much," he said. She smiled faintly. "It offers truth." He nodded. That felt right. The wind passed through the grass, bending it without breaking, Clouds moved slowly overhead. Time continued, indifferent as ever. Yet something rare had taken root here, not in the soil, but between two lives that had learned what solitude cost. They did not know how long peace would last. They did not know what challenges waited beyond the next season. But they knew this. They were no longer alone. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land, they turned back toward the cabin together, their steps falling into quiet rhythm. Behind them, the ranch stood, harsh, unresolved, unchanged. Ahead of them, no clear promise waited, only each other. And perhaps that was the bravest choice of all, to stay in a place that does not belong to you. Not because it is easy, but because you choose to stand there anyway.